Welcome back. This video will cover part 2 of chapter 13, Getting a Job with Your Bachelor's Degree for PSY 120, Careers in Psychology, Neuroscience, and Human Development. Someone at some point has probably told you to be very careful about your social media presence when you are looking for employment. And you probably, if you're like my kids, you may have given an epic eye roll at suggestions that anyone looking for a job is going to poke around there. Well, they do. Internet searches can show something about your lifestyle, your activities that may or may not reflect on you positively. As college students, you may have your Instagram accounts, you're probably not on Facebook, but whatever accounts you're using, your profile there, if you are discoverable by a potential employer, like if your account is listed under your actual name, being found to be showing lots of pictures of you drinking, lots of pictures of you engaged in dangerous or suspect activities, may make it look like you are not a good risk for employment, and that you may represent a liability. Social media profiles and posts are unlikely to make you look good, but unprofessional ones are highly likely to make you look bad and get you rejected from consideration for an interview. Employers, remember that they're not just being judgmental or old-fashioned. They know that with any employee that they bring in, they're investing money and time in hiring, and they expect to hire people who are genuine grown-ups, who they can count on to be responsible and reliable. And it doesn't matter whether you're working at Dunkin' or working at some really big financial firm. They're going to want people who are grown-ups, who are responsible. They're going to show up when they say they're going to show up, and they're going to do what they're expected to do. If you're making posts that show you partying a lot, or that you're picking fights with people online, that can be a real turnoff to potential employers. Or if you just spend a lot of time complaining about your life and complaining about people and complaining about everyone, especially complaining about your current employer, that looks really bad. So make sure that you're careful about your social media. Successful applicants are people who are seen as trustworthy and capable at a bare minimum. So you don't want to do things that are going to essentially shoot you in the foot by having a social media presence, even though it's your right to have that media presence if you want. If you have a presence that suggests that you are in some way not a morally good fit for the company, that can be a problem for you. You can use LinkedIn to build your professional network. LinkedIn, it has its positives, it has its negatives. It's like it tries to be a little too much social media sometimes, but it can be a way to connect up with people that you wouldn't otherwise get a chance to meet. It's also a way for you to present your professional self. So users on LinkedIn can connect with each other. They can share information about their work-related experiences and skills. And they can, get more information about potential workplaces. Building your professional network is not only important, but in some cases essential for pursuing the kinds of positions that you want. For bachelor's level people, you're just coming out of college, you have this brand new degree. If you've spent at least a couple of years kind of building your presence on LinkedIn, making some connections in the workspaces that you're interested in pursuing, it can open some doors for you. The platform does make it pretty straightforward for you to create your presence on LinkedIn, and sometimes it will kind of give you a push to add additional information that you may not have thought of that can be useful to a potential employer. Basic accounts are free, if you have the resources for a premium account, that can open some additional possibilities, but the basic account is free. You can also search for companies and learn more about them. If there is a particular area of work that you're really, really interested in, you can search for those companies that do that kind of work and educate yourself. That education can really matter, because when you get down the line and you're applying for jobs in those spaces, you can show that you are educated, that you know what these companies do. You use some of the lingo that they use to talk about their work, and it shows that you've invested time in learning more about the type of skills and abilities these companies seek. It also gives you a chance to, really tap into connections connected to your psychology experiences as well. You should, and this kind of goes back to the social media issue, even on LinkedIn, there are times when people will get themselves into trouble. You should expect to be searched, to have your name searched, and in some career areas, you should expect them to run a background check on you to find out, whether or not you've been in trouble in the past. So it's up to the point now where about 75% of potential employers will report that they do a review of social media profiles, and about half of them have reported they have not hired someone based on what they saw on that social media profile. Again, they want someone mature, responsible, and reliable. I know I've already said this. I'm saying it again. Quick internet searches can lead to discovery of things that you do not want potential employers seeing. So what kind of content specifically will hurt your chances at getting a job? Showing provocative images. In some ways there's a double standard here, but in some ways not. Generally speaking, potential employers do not want to see you showing a lot of skin. Whether you're male, female, or non-binary, whatever, they do not want to see a lot of skin. It's seen as immature, whether that is deserving or not. They don't want to see it. They don't want to see a lot of information about drinking. They particularly, don't want to see about drug use or criminal behavior. They don't want to see that you engage in a lot of bad-mouthing, especially if you are bad-mouthing your employers or potential colleagues. They don't want to see people on social media who do a lot of the things we do when we text. They don't want to see people using a ton of bad grammar, bad spelling. It's often inferred that that's a person who is less serious about their education. Making inflammatory statements, particularly in this political environment, so engaging in a lot of political speech, it's probably best to avoid that at the present time. You also do not want to lie about your qualifications. That can sometimes be it can be seen as evidence that you lack integrity. And also, if they see that you've been sharing confidential information, like outing people in terms of their negative behaviors at a previous employment site. I know we're living in a culture right now where it's kind of like a sport to make other people publicly responsible for their bad behavior. And while that feels really delicious at the time, it can get you into trouble in terms of seeking employment, because they're going to look at you going after your previous employers, whether you're right or wrong. They're going to see you going after your previous employer as a sign that you're going to be a troublemaker in your new workplace. Finally, really look at the screen names that you've chosen. Frequently, social media Like if you do a Google search of your own name, see what comes up in terms of your social media presence. Sometimes we assume that we've anonymized our social media accounts, and in fact, we may not have. So make sure that you do some scrubbing of your social media accounts. So when we talk about scrubbing in preparation for seeking jobs, it's a good idea to make your profile photo fairly neutral. And again, people who are hiring do not want to see goofy drunk photos of you and your friends as your profile photo. If you're actively looking for a job and your name is attached to your social media account, you want to professionalize it at least to some degree. What the strategies a lot of students take right now is they'll have some social media presence that's their professional presence, like on LinkedIn or even on Facebook. And then they'll have private accounts that they use just for friends and family, and sometimes just for friends. You may know more about how to accomplish that than I do, but make sure that you're doing some scrubbing. Excuse me. You may also want to do some filtering. You may have friends who are not quite so careful with what they post. You may want to restrict your friend list to people you actually know. Why? Because there's some bias in the hiring sector. If they see someone who has thousands of friends on social media, that may communicate to some people in hiring that they are on their way to being an influencer, and that they're not particularly serious about their work or the work that they're applying for. You may want to restrict the ability of people to do searches. So one strategy that some students take is to make their profiles private, and really make it so that very little information shows up. Now, some of us, regardless of whether we're looking for jobs or not, do that because we value a higher level of privacy than others. So give some careful thought to restricting your social media accounts. Make it so that people can't see what you post. If you want what you post to be private and not accessible to a potential employer, restrict the public search. It's important when you're applying for jobs to show who you really are, and that may seem counter to what has already been discussed here, this idea that you need to scrub your presence. Your digital profiles, so the profile that represents you online, needs to show who you are in its most ideal form. If you're looking for jobs, that may mean that you want to keep private aspects of who and what you are apart from what you're saying. You need to change usernames that might be seen as inappropriate. And in fact, if you're posting online and your profiles are public and you use a lot of swear words, that can sometimes be seen as inappropriate by potential hiring staff. So be careful. You can also use your social media, and this is especially true on LinkedIn, to show how much you know about a particular subject. In some cases, potential employers are going to look at, what do you post? What do you respond to on LinkedIn to show your genuine level of interest in the work. And that's one of the reasons why LinkedIn is often recommended for self-promotion, because basically it's a social media-like resume. You're using your activities on LinkedIn not to share, I went to dinner with so-and-so and we had the best time ever and post a picture of what you ate. That is not what LinkedIn is for. Keep that for Instagram. LinkedIn is about who you are in the workplace. So be careful to think about what you put online when you're in the job market, and the goal is that you as a professional or a potential professional is being presented. So speaking of LinkedIn, what kind of things should be included? There's LinkedIn profiles. If you don't have one, they start with a headline. It's kind of like an objective, but kind of like a slogan. I'm terrible at writing those things. It should be short, somewhat memorable, because LinkedIn is really about marketing yourself. Present your education, and it's basically you filling in forms here when you build your profile initially. So include all of your schools, majors, minors. If you've done study abroad or summer programs, include those. Your work experience, you enter that, including years. It doesn't matter if it's part-time or full-time. And you can also include accomplishments at each of those work sites. Organizations that you belong to can be included. And you'll find that many of those organizations have LinkedIn presences, and it's nice to show that you're networked there. Identifying your skills and expertise. And many students are like, I don't have any skills. And I'm like, you just did a complete research project from the ground up. Stop telling me you don't have skills. It can be anything from you can use Microsoft Office products like Excel and Word. My students all end up having significant skills using data analysis packages like SPSS. All of those things can be listed as skills and experience. If you've done volunteer work, that can look particularly good to add there. Honors and awards should be listed. If there are specific courses that are relevant to skills and abilities, like I always encourage my students to include the fact that they have research methods and data analysis in their background, and to list specifically what kind of packages they have experience with, what kind of software. And then there's typically a summary space where you can make a clear statement about your qualifications and goals. You can also tag yourself as looking for work, open to hiring, open to opportunities. You can upload your current resume, and you can, depending on the privacy settings, you can tweak that so that people can just go look at your resume as well. Your profile photo on LinkedIn, it shouldn't be overly stylized. It should not be highly filtered. It needs to look like you. There shouldn't be weird backgrounds that are distracting. It should be a fairly professional headshot. Your face should be taking up most of the space in the frame. Head, top of shoulders. Your goal is to look warm, approachable. Your eyes should be looking in the camera with a natural expression. It's recommended that you dress professionally and avoid clothing that is too revealing. Now, this used to be one of those double standard spaces where that was a rule only for females and female presenting individuals, but that's the case for everyone. You do not want to be showing a lot of skin. You want to show a professional appearance. You can use editing apps, but you do so sparingly. Remove some blemishes, but do not alter your appearance with filters that make you look different than you actually look. Why? Because it's disingenuous. You may show up at an interview, and they look at the photo on LinkedIn and they're like, this doesn't look anything like you. That suggests that you're not honest. So you want to be careful with that. The interview is a critical component of the job-seeking process. It's often seen as the critical decision-making element for people who are doing hiring. It is seen as more important than grades. It's more important than work experience, etc. So, your interview, that is your opportunity to make yourself memorable, make yourself known, and give your prospective employer a chance to see what you would be like to work with. If it goes well, many companies have rounds of interviews. They may start with an online interview or a telephone interview, and then if you make that cut, they may have you in for an initial interview with someone on staff, usually in HR. And then in some big companies, there may be another round. So it's not uncommon to have second or third interviews in a hiring process, especially if you're looking for employment in a competitive field. What are they looking for in your interview? They're looking for your capacity for communication, your professionalism, how clearly you can talk about your professional goals. And they're often looking for someone who can be positive and clear and careful and who comes off as honest. Make sure that you are prepared and ready to go to your interview. Have a very clear and rehearsed, prepared statement for why you want to work there, and that statement should reflect the fact that you understand that workplace. You know what's involved in the job, and that you're well suited for completing that job, and that you have the qualifications for it. Interviews can be stressful, but you can, if you practice, getting ready for that, working with career services at your university, you can do practice interviews. That can be really, really worth your time. So as you prepare for your interview, interviewers are going to ask a number of questions. Some of the most common involve trying to suss out why the person wants to work for us, what kind of position is this person best suited for, what are their qualifications, why should I hire them, do they meet my employment needs or not, and critically, are they trustworthy? And so that's why they're going to ask some of the questions that they ask. Some employment sites are going to ask what I look at as tricky questions or fluff questions, just to kind of take you off guard and see whether you can think on your feet. That kind of thing will happen, but these bullet points are the most common kind of things that you're going to have to talk about when you're being interviewed. Is the interviewer wants to sit back after you leave and say, why do they want to work for us? What do they really say? And the way they answer these questions after you leave is going to determine whether you're good for the next round or whether you're ready for an offer. You do need to learn some things about the company or organization that you want to work for. So what is the relative size and growth of this particular industry? Showing that you have done some research and you understand the organization and the category that the organization lives in will show that you have a professional interest in what the company does. What kind of services are being offered? What kind of products do they have? Where is if it's a big corporation, where's the headquarters located? What kind of divisions is that corporation made up of? You want to do some research about who's the competition and what does the company you're applying for offer that the other competitors do not. And it also shows, if you know who the competition is, it shows that you're not just conveniently trying to apply randomly to this company. It also shows you want to work in the industry. You want to work in this space. So if you're applying for a job in marketing at one firm, showing that you know the competitor firms in the region shows that you have a reasonable understanding about the business of marketing. And then be familiar with any sort of things that are going on in the news that are related to the industry. What that shows is that you're current, you're paying attention to the industry, that the industry matters to you, and that the organization's level of success matters to you. During the interview, some things that you need to be prepared to have on hand: bring some copies of your resume. If you have to fill in applications, relying on your memory can be problematic. And it's also nice to make sure that you can hand that to the people who are interviewing you to add to your file if they don't have it. You should not over-dominate the conversation. The interviewer is in charge of the conversation unless they say otherwise. Be clear and positive in your answers. Make sure that when they ask you about your previous work experiences, do not use that as an opportunity to dump on your past position or the people who worked in that organization. That will not earn you points. So do not speak negatively about former employers, no matter how much they deserve it. Don't do it in a job interview. Let that conversation about salary and benefits be led by the interviewer. Sometimes when potential employees over-focus on pay, that can detract from their attractiveness as an employee. The interviewer wants to see that you care about the work at least as much as you care about salary and benefits. If the employer doesn't tell you when you'll hear back, you can ask, but do so when you do a follow-up call. It's sometimes seen as rude when you're finishing up the interview to make a demand for a decision. And that'll just sometimes make you look bad or impatient. Make sure that you thank the employer, that you shake hands, and after the interview, after you get back home, make sure to email a thank you note. If you have a personal email for, say, a supervisor or actually the person who would be acting as your boss, and they interviewed you, you can email them as well. If you don't have a specific email, you can send that thank you email to HR. So what happens if you get a job offer? Usually offers are made over the phone. They may be made in person, but they may also come through email, and that can sometimes feel impersonal. So if you're looking for a job and you've interviewed and you feel like the interview went well, or even if you don't know how well the interview went, make sure that you're answering your phone, listening to your voicemails, and reading your email. And you're doing it every single day. If you get an email with a job offer and you wait 4 days, that's not going to look good for you, and they may pull the offer. The most appropriate response to an offer that's in person or by phone is to ask some questions and ask for a day or two to think about the offer. Before accepting the offer, make sure you understand the conditions of your employment, like how many hours a day, hours a week are you expected to be on site. What kind of vacation can you expect? Is there a timeline for probationary status? That kind of thing. So make sure that you understand those elements. Usually if you're moving into an entry-level bachelor's degree level job, there's not a lot of room for negotiating salary. The salary is what the salary is. As you climb higher and you get more experience, yes, you can do some negotiating, but entry-level positions, generally it's best not to make demands about pay. If you decide you're going to negotiate for a larger salary, make sure that you're focusing on skills that make you worth it. You don't want to oversell yourself. Make sure that the skills you say you have are skills you actually have, and that you are worth the investment of a higher salary. If the salary is lower than you need or that you hope to get, and it becomes clear that that salary is not negotiable, you have a decision to make. You have to decide whether getting the position and the experience that it could give you and the opportunities it may provide you, you have to decide whether the hit to salary is something you can tolerate. If it's not, keep looking. Give some thought to where this job fits into your larger long-term goals. If the position is a really good fit as an entry-level starting point for your long-term career goals, you can sometimes say to yourself, yeah, the salary is pretty low, but it's going to give me these experiences that I can then leverage into a higher position at a later point in time. And this is especially true if the job is going to offer you opportunities for professional growth, and that it fits with the practical aspects of your life. If you decide to accept an offer, be sure to let any current employees know that you've accepted an offer, but also inform other employers that you have applied for jobs with that you're off the market. And that's a politeness thing. You may have applied for many similar positions at lots of different organizations. If you accept an offer from one of those organizations and don't tell the others, it can reflect badly on you in the future if you decide to shift from one organization to another. If you decide not to accept the job, you can notify the employer by email as soon as possible. If you feel the need to discuss it with the potential employer and you've decided not to take the job, you can do so by phone as well, but typically an email is acceptable. And that concludes my coverage of Chapter 13.